Hey everyone, Ron here. Today I want to talk about why so many people are driving cars. They clearly can't afford. Have you ever stopped at a red light, looked over, and wonder how the person next to you is driving a truck that costs more than some houses used to? Not a sports car. Not some exotic luxury import. Just a giant shiny pickup with massive wheels, a leather interior, and a monthly payment that could probably cover rent in half the country. And the weird part is, the person behind the wheel often isn't rich. They're not a hedge fund manager. They're not secretly sitting on family money. A lot of the time, they're just normal people with normal jobs: teachers, office workers, warehouse employees, nurses, mechanics, sales reps. So the obvious question is, how are regular people affording vehicles that look completely out of reach on paper? Because if you run the numbers honestly, a lot of these payments make no sense. And yet millions of people sign those contracts every single year. The uncomfortable answer is that in many cases, they're not really affording these vehicles at all. They're surviving them. They're stretching, rearranging, borrowing, delaying, and rationalizing their way into a payment that would have sounded absurd 10 years ago. And that's where this whole story starts. With the payment itself, for a lot of buyers, $700, $800, even $1,000 a month for a vehicle no longer sounds shocking. It's just presented as normal, and once something becomes normal, people stop questioning it. That's the shift that changed everything. People don't really buy cars based on total price anymore. They buy them based on monthly payment. A $55,000 truck doesn't feel like $55,000. It feels like $789 a month. The real price gets hidden behind a smaller number that feels manageable. And the easiest way to make a huge purchase feel manageable is simple: stretch the loan. 3-year car loans used to be normal, then 4, then 5, now 6, 7, even 8-year loans are common, and the longer the loan gets, the smaller the monthly payment looks. That's the trap. The dealership doesn't need the payment to be smart. It doesn't even need it to be comfortable. It just needs to be low enough that you can talk yourself into it. At that point, it can feel like you own the truck, when really, the payment owns you. And this is where things start getting dangerous, because the vehicle is losing value the entire time you're making those payments. So after a few years, a lot of people end up in a brutal position. The truck is worth far less than what they still owe on it. That gap has a name: negative equity. It means you owe more on the vehicle than the vehicle itself is actually worth. And once you fall into negative equity, upgrading stops being exciting and starts becoming financial quicksand. Because when someone goes back to the dealership to trade that vehicle in, the debt usually doesn't disappear. Instead, it gets rolled into the next loan. Old debt gets attached to the new car payment. And suddenly, the next vehicle isn't just paying for itself, it's carrying baggage from the last one too. That's how people end up in a bizarre situation where they're basically paying for 2 cars at once. One payment is for the new truck sitting in the driveway. The other is hidden inside the loan debt from the old vehicle they don't even own anymore. But the real reason people say yes to these deals isn't just math, it's psychology. Because a truck, or an SUV, or any expensive vehicle usually isn't sold as transportation. It's sold as identity. The ad never shows someone stuck in traffic on the way to work. It shows freedom, adventure, mountains, campfires, open roads, strength, control. You're not just buying a machine. You're buying a fantasy version of your life. And once a purchase becomes tied to identity, logic gets weaker. Because now turning down the expensive truck doesn't feel like rejecting a bad financial decision. It feels like rejecting a version of yourself, the successful, confident, established version you want the world to see. So how do people actually make the payment fit? For a lot of households, the answer is simple. They bend the rest of their financial life around the car. The vehicle doesn't naturally fit the budget. The budget gets reshaped to make room for the vehicle. And once that happens, the car payment quietly becomes the priority. Savings get pushed aside. Vacations get delayed. Emergency funds stay small. Other goals wait. Month after month, the vehicle gets paid first, and everything else fights for whatever money is left over. Sometimes it gets even worse than that. People pick up extra shifts, weekend delivery gigs, or second jobs, not to build wealth, not to invest, not to create freedom, but just to keep feeding the machine sitting in the driveway. They're not using the car to create freedom. They're giving up freedom to keep the car. And even if the monthly payment alone feels survivable, the payment is never the full story. Because the payment is just the beginning. Insurance, gas, repairs, tires, registration, all of it stacks on top of the loan until the real cost becomes much bigger than the number people focus. That's the hidden damage expensive vehicles do. Everything around them costs more. Bigger tires cost more. Bigger repairs cost more. Bigger insurance bills cost more. More fuel, more maintenance, more unexpected expenses. The truck isn't just expensive once, it stays expensive. So what looks like an $800 payment on paper can quietly become $1,400 a month once you add the full picture. Not just the loan, the insurance, the gas, the maintenance, the repairs, the random surprises. And that's when people start wondering why they always feel broke, even though technically they can afford the payment. Because every oversized car payment has a shadow cost. That money isn't just leaving your bank account, it's being taken away from something else. Investing, debt payoff, emergency savings, breathing room, flexibility, peace of mind. That's the part people don't see when they look at the truck. And that's really what this comes down to. Now versus later. A shiny vehicle gives you a visible emotional reward right now. People see it. You touch it every day. It feels good immediately. Saving, investing, and building wealth give you something later, quieter, less flashy, and a lot easier to ignore. From the outside, a lot of these situations look completely fine. Nice truck, clean driveway, no obvious problem. But underneath that image, there can be debt, stress, delayed goals, no emergency cushion, and a budget that's one bad month away from falling apart. And that's the real trade people are making, whether they realize it or not. Not truck versus no truck. Freedom versus image. Flexibility versus appearance. Future wealth versus present status. And a lot of people choose the thing that looks richer while quietly becoming poorer. That's the uncomfortable truth behind so many vehicles people clearly can't afford. Sometimes the driver really is wealthy. Sometimes the vehicle really does serve a purpose. But a lot of the time, the person behind the wheel isn't comfortably affording it. They're stretching for it, borrowing for it, sacrificing for it, and normalizing a payment that controls far more of their financial life than they want to admit. Because the danger isn't liking cars. The danger is when the payment owns you more than you own the car. When your transportation starts deciding where you live, how much stress you carry, whether you can save, whether you can invest, whether you can breathe. And at that point, the shiny truck in the driveway isn't really a symbol of freedom. It's a very expensive reminder that looking rich and building wealth are two completely different things. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more breakdowns on money, debt, and the financial decisions people normalize without ever stopping to question.